Welcome back. Now we're going to talk about in my case, my 5 biggest influences on the bass, and Dominic's going to talk in chronological order about his 5, five greatest double bass players, or your 5 favourite ones.
My 5 favourite ones, influences,
And we're going to start with some honourable mentions, which is only fair. Now I could go on all day with honourable mentions. There are obviously some fantastic players. We were just talking about Darryl Jones and Victor Wooten and those guys. Weren't necessarily an influence. Victor was a bit later than when I started, I guess. When I started, I was influenced by people like Mark King and Billy Sheehan, but that hasn't really stayed in the playing, It's like listening to Tallis and all that amazing tap. It's amazing, but I've no plans to put that in the middle of a gig anymore. So, but honourable mentions in my case, it would be entirely wrong not to have Billy Cox on this list. Have you heard Band of Gypsies?
Yeah, the Jimi Hendrix, yeah.
Oh man, that's a fantastic live album. We got, I think somebody once described Buddy Miles as like a cement mixer. Really, it's like compared to Mitch Mitchell, it's like entirely another thing. And I think Billy Cox was an old army mate of Hendrix, but he's so clear. It's just so lovely and groovy what he plays. Machine Gun and tracks like that. I love all the Hendrix stuff, but that particular Band of Gypsies album is just unbelievable. And Machine Gun in particular, although Changes and stuff like that, is also fabulous. Another honourable mention I would have to put on the list, apologies to my old mate, is Mick Karn. Mick Karn? Japan, yeah. Did you hear any of his solo stuff later, or any of the...
No, what was... they had a big hit with him doing like fretless stuff, didn't he?
Visions of China, that was
extraordinary.
Bit of... the sort of riffs, if that's the right word. Was he of Greek background? I'm not sure, but he was using all kinds of scales and stuff from his particular background, and come out in his playing, and it's just the riffs he come out with, they're completely unique. And I had one of his solo albums as well, and was it Bestial Cluster? Does that sound right? There's some tracks on there. The riffs he was playing were off out of this world, I thought.
Well, I remember Pino Palladino. I actually saw him with Paul Young in Shepton Mallet in about the early 80s, 84, I think.
Right. Wow.
And it was at Wherever I Lay My Hat. He's got that thing. Yeah.
Yeah. How many number one record? How many number one records have got sliding fretless harmonics and the chords in the middle of them? And there's like a fourth, double stop, I suppose. Pino Palladino, perhaps. I did learn to play that at one time. Wow. Gosh. Right, a couple more here. Again, because of my old mate, I can't not include John Entwistle on here. We listened to The Who, a stack. I quite like Peter Quaife as a bass player as well, from the Kinks as well. And Ronald Leafy Lane as well. Who, grew up listening to those guys. It was great. And finally, Jaco has got to get an honourable mention. I've got his... Well, let's see, here we go. I didn't make it into the last video, but... When we made the books video, this almost made the list, because of course we both caned this as young blokes, Came with an instructional video. There's a jam at the end with John Schofield and Kenwood Denard.
Yeah, that's it.
And there's some great stuff in here, some stuff you can take away. He gets this amazing intro at the start, and then he says, "Yeah, man, give me a gig," and all that sort of stuff. So, highly recommended. Yeah, Jaco, crikey. Favourite Jaco track for me, Port of Entry. I don't like yourself.
Oh no, yeah, that's definitely one of them. That and Havona.
Right.
What's that? What I'm talking about? It's Teen Town.
Teen Town's unbelievable. Yeah, absolutely. So they're my honourable mentions. How about yourself?
Well, I have, because we just talked about 5. There's so many great bass players. I really love Sam Jones. He's one of the greats. And with Cannibal, not oddly enough, but he does. I don't think he takes a bass solo, but Cannibal live in San Francisco. He plays amazing. Sam Jones. A big love for Wilbur Ware.
Yes.
Live Village Vanguard with Sonny Rollins, just fantastic. And I've just read a paper all about Bob Cranshaw. And Bob Cranshaw is just really underrated, but he really nails the chair down, Also, I haven't put Ron Carter. He's one of the greats, Actually, I remember reading the instruction video of his book of his, which was quite good. So, but he's not in the list. I would say 5. It's kind of like 5 bass players I'd take to my grave, sort of kind of thing, you know.
Right, can you put the name of it in the comments? I might get that myself.
Oh, okay.
Ron Carter instruction book.
Yeah.
I've got a great transcription book of Ron Carter's from one of the Abersolds. I think it was the Cedar Walton one I was talking to the other day.
Oh, okay.
I think Dick Horden once upon a time gave me, who was head of the Leeds College of Music. Amazing bebop trumpet player back in the day. What's your favourite Ron Carter then?
Well, there's just so. I mean, it's just that stuff with Miles. He's really holds, especially that My Funny Valentine and stuff. He holds it together. He's the spine that they come. I mean, really, in many ways, for me, Herbie is harmonically leading where they all go, and everyone's just brilliant. But Ron plays amazing through that. A little known fact: he actually plays on Revolution Will Not Be Televised on bass guitar.
Wow!
Yeah,
really, on the record.
Yeah, he's on.
Well,
that.
You introduced me to that, right?
Yeah, he's great. So, and there's he plays on a really great Roberta Flack album called it's called First Take, and he does a great, and he actually nicks it from Ray Brown. That is compared to what? No, is it compared? Trying Times. That's the tune's called Trying Times with Roberta Flack playing piano. I can't remember who the drummer is, but Ron Carter. It's one of the great bass lines. He nicks it from Ray Brown, but hell, who cares?
Well, I mean, if you're going to nick something from somebody, I'm learning stuff here. I think I'll be watching this back and checking these things out. Are we on to our list?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Right, so I'm going to talk about the 5 big bass influences on me in terms of when I first started out. So, I mean, they're not necessarily my 5 favourite bassists, although some of them are. And it's not a list of the greatest bass players of all time or anything like that. They're just people that influence my playing. So in 5th place here, we've got Jimmy Blanton, who we mentioned earlier, who played with that great Ellington, that great period, was it Wellman Broad at the really early stuff? I think eventually Jimmy Blanton played in the Blanton, there was that Blanton-Webster band, sort of 1938, 41-ish, something like that.
Yeah, I've got a CD, it says Duke Ellington, the Blanton, Webster years.
Is it like a triple CD?
Yeah.
It's fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, with Jack the Bear and all those
Well,
things.
I've written that on here. I've written that on here. There you go,
Yeah.
Jack the Bear. Because I remember being in the back of a tour bus, I suppose it was, with a Walkman or whatever, and taking down Jack the Bear, which actually was introduced to me when I was at Leeds. There was a chap, the history of jazz teacher was a chap called John Robert Brown, and he had a band called, what do I think now? Crikey, John Brown's Buddies, that's it, of course, it was a great name, John Brown's Student Buddies, and they played Jack the Bear, and then many years later I decided to take it down and transcribe it. And Blanton's just something else, isn't he? He just invented that stuff, but again, just the phrasing and stuff just sticks in your playing. So there you go, my number 5 is going to be, because some serious transcription started to happen at that point. Yeah. Jimmy Blanton.
I've put mine in a slightly not archaeological order. What do you call it? Time-wise, historical order, or whatever. Just fine. I mean, yeah, Blanton for me blew the doors off. But I would say the first guy to really put, so Blanton's. I should have put him as an honorable mention, but yeah, he's just amazing what he did. And also that trio album he does with the duo album he does with Duke Ellington, where they do like Pitter Patter Panther and all those sort of things, and Sophisticated Lady, fantastic. There's a blues on there as well. Interesting. I read an article with one of the great bass players now, and Larry Grenadier talking about what Blanton was still such an influence. Great. Anyway, so I'm just going to do in time order. I'm going to say Pettiford, Oscar Pettiford. Just because he really put bebop. Well, is it bebop or is it just that bit early 40s pre-bop? But anyway, he really put the bass up. Whether it was on bass or on cello that he tuned in force. He really put lines on the bass. And he probably would have done what Blanton would have ended up doing if he'd lived longer. But Oscar Pettiford. Amazing player, and definitely you should get as much as you can. Especially there's a trio album with Lucky Thompson and Skeeter Best on guitar, and they do Trickotism or Trickrotism. I don't know how you actually pronounce it, but they seem to spell it with an R or not an R at certain times.
Which is an Oscar Pettiford tune.
Yeah, Oscar Pettiford tune. Yeah. Okay.
Right, fabulous. Now, now the next one I'm going to talk about here. Now, my last three are going to be bass guitarist, but then the fourth place is also a double bass player. Because when I first started at Leeds College of Music, they had this amazing library full of vinyl. You know, with Michael Mantler LPs and all sorts of things in there, and they had I think it was Lester Young, but they had a fantastic record in there with a gap, and I listened to it, and the bass player was doing bowed solos and I said, oh my word, he's doing bowed solos in octaves. And it's like, oh look, I'm thinking that can't be possible. I tried it on my bass guitar, I tried to work some of it out, and it was impossible to play that fast. And it was only later that the penny dropped, and I was obviously, you know, not listening very well. He was singing along with his solos in octave higher. And Slam Stewart, and it just turned my head. This idea that you could improvise and play and sing along with your solos. So that started to happen, you know, and I still do it. You probably remember me doing that back in the day.
Yeah.
That thing. So, you know, just the idea that you would, and also the other thing was sometimes your own phrasing starts to drive you nuts. Especially when I was younger, it's like trying to fly around as fast as I could. And it's just, I'm just wiggling my fingers. I think Jaco talked about that, didn't he? The real deal and all that. Hey man, just wiggling your fingers. So in order to actually try and phrase it a bit better, I thought, well, try and sing along. Because it's going to be more singable for a start. Second, it's forcing you to try and hear what you're playing. So you can't just wiggle your fingers at speed, you know? So fourth place, highly recommended. And he didn't get mentioned much, and I think he should, because I think it's fantastic. Slam Stewart. But again, he's just in that period just before bebop kicks in, kind of thing, would you say? Yeah. No, there we go. Right, pass this along.
Yeah, okay, second one is just a behemoth, and this guy, and we share a birthday, although he's 40 years older than I am, was Ray Brown, and just an absolute monster, just a great player. I hate to say it because it's funny, I'm sort of rediscovering stuff I haven't really checked out properly before, but I'm just listening to a lot of the Poll Winners albums with Barney Kessel and Shelly Manne, and everyone should, as a bass player, I mean, there's loads of great Ray Brown, but that one, those 4 CDs, I think it's 3 or 4 CDs, they're phenomenal. Ray Brown's just amazing, just such a great player. There's loads of great Ray Brown, and I tend to prefer the earlier stuff, but I mean, you know, it's just so many good things that he's on. I'll definitely say Ray Brown.
Yeah, I mean, those Poll Winners CDs, they're fantastic. They sound like they're having a really good laugh as well. And they're really thinking about the arrangements and how to get the 3 instruments. You know, it doesn't sound like they just turned up and had a jam. It sounds like they're really thinking about the arrangements. Which
and I was going to say there's a really interesting version of Ray Brown playing So What, not Paul Chambers. Yeah, which is quite interesting. So
I love his stuff with Oscar Peterson.
Yeah.
Especially some of those songbook. And again, that's the load of stuff I transcribed at one time. That some of the stuff, I think I got to about my 6th Ray Brown transcription, and I went, what? I found a note that wasn't perfectly in tune. It was about the 6th transcription, you know, which is a hell of a thing. Extraordinary player. Right, now, number 3 in my list. It would be entirely dishonest not to have this guy in my list, because I mean, I would not be touching a bass guitar without this guy. It's got to be Bruce Foxton from the Jam.
Yeah.
And I can still, doesn't matter what style I'm playing, I can still sort of see and hear that influence, you know, in when I'm playing. I mean, I could be playing in a Latin band and I'm thinking, I'm sure that's Bruce Foxton, you know, which is kind of fun. And I just grew up with those records. It just lives in that stuff just lives in here. I was chatting with my old mate yesterday. We were talking about really obscure random facts about jam records, you know, because it's like an endless goldmine, you know, even after all these years. Fantastic bass player, great style, sang the BVs as well, contributed the odd tune, but just the lines and that he played. Yeah, they've lived in my head all these years, 40 odd years. Fantastic.
Well, down in Tube Station Midnight is one of the first bass riffs, because I started on bass guitar. It's one of the first bass riffs I've learned.
I think probably the first thing I transcribed was Funeral Pyre. And I phoned up my mate and went, I've worked out Funeral Pyre. And I played him what I'd worked out, and he said, It doesn't sound right, you know. It sounds wrong. And it was complete nonsense what I was playing. He was right.
Yeah.
So there you go, my first transcription. Right, so there you go. Number 3, Bruce Foxton. I'll pass it along.
By far my biggest influence. I wish I sounded more like him, but I don't. But he's the person I transcribe most and just love. Is Paul Chambers from Detroit, and just my favourite bass player. He's the person I keep learning solos. I'm trying to work on my arco playing, so I'm trying to learn some of his arco solos. I've just started learning the arco solo on the theme, which is on an album called everyone should have, called Bass on Top. The first tune's a little bit of a long arco introduction on a tune I can't. Wow, what's it called? Alone Together. That's it. But once you get past the introduction, it's brilliant. So, but I mean, yeah, Paul Chambers is just the best, and he's just for me, and just phenomenal bass player.
Yeah, again, somebody I did transcribe quite a bit of back in the day, and I think you've talked about this a lot. It sounds like he's hearing every note, you know, and all that kind of stuff. Which I mean, the lines he plays are fantastic, and it's just got such projection as well, you know. I love those Red Garland trio albums.
Yeah.
You know, I listen. They're in the car. They're in the car right now. They get listened to all the time. That stuff.
I really there's my 2 favourite are a Garland of Red. I think he's amazing, and I really love Man Taker.
Yes. There's that. Is it A Foggy Day? The first track on the Garland of Red.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, I can't remember exactly.
The bass on that is just fantastic. Oh man. Yeah, I can hear it in there right now. Yeah, fantastic. Paul Chambers, can't argue with that one. It'd be on my list, but we obviously had to have five ones each. So, second place, excuse me, it's gonna have to be James Jamerson. I was the right kind of age. That great Dr. Lick's book came out. I think it was Hal Leonard published it. Standing in the Shadows of Motown. My first copy of that was a couple of tapes, a couple of C90 cassettes or something, full of interviews with people associated with Motown, although I should say Tamla Motown, because I grew up with my mum's Tamla Motown singles. She used to rush out of the house and buy the new Supreme single or whatever when she heard it on the radio. Although she was big on the Four Tops. I mean, James Jamerson plays fantastic on those Four Tops albums. And then, of course, the Love Child album. And there's that, I think Anthony Jackson transcribed How Long Has That Evening Train Been Gone, which was an album track from Love Child. If you haven't tried to play that transcription, it's fantastic. And it'll really test your reading chops as well. I think it's in about 5 flats and changes key to it a couple of times as well. There's all sorts going on. And that book of transcriptions, fantastic for your reading, fantastic for hearing lines and just...
He's on quite a bit of what's going on, isn't he?
Yes.
It's not the whole album, but he's on quite a few of it, isn't he?
It's interesting that they interviewed the guy that arranged that on the tapes, and the guy said, I think they moved to LA by then. I might be wrong, but Motown moved to LA in a sort of about 1970-ish. I'm sure I'll be corrected in the comments, and that's fine. But the guy that arranged the album of What's Going On, he actually transcribed a load of Jamerson licks and put them in, and Jamerson's actually reading quite a few of his own patterns, you know.
Oh, is that right?
I mean, obviously What's Going On, the improvisation on that is unbelievable, but yeah, I think the guy wrote a lot of those parts, you know. I mean, that gets called on gigs. I mean, I don't know if it gets called on some. I mean, a couple of my friends who are happy to cross over and get the old electric bass on the go on the improvising gigs. That'll get called. It's been called, that tune.
Isn't Bob? Was it Bob Babbitt? Is that the guy's name?
Bob Babbitt.
He's on one of the tracks, isn't it?
Well, he did play a lot of that Motown. I think Caval Kay played quite a bit of Motown stuff, and Bob Babbitt. But I think he even ended up on a couple of those Hendrix things that got released later. And I don't think he was there at the time necessarily, but my mate seemed to collect a load of old Hendrix. You know, because all kinds of stuff got released, didn't it? You know, they were even overdubbing people and all kinds of things. But yeah, Jamerson, and yeah. So Stand in the Shadows of Motown. It's an education all in itself. It's probably quite pricey now, but I massively recommend a book and listen to the original records. And so many of the guys on, I mean, you know, John Entwistle, well, and somebody else I'm going to mention in a minute or two, very influenced by the Motown stuff. Bruce Fox, and there's several Motown tracks that the Jam did, usually in sound checks and stuff. But you know, right, and I'll pass that over.
Oh yeah, so I'm gonna, number 4. Just going to quickly say, and he definitely died too young. Was Scott LaFaro. Definitely don't play like him, but I mean he's just really interesting. Just he really opened the doors about what people can do. I still, there's a friend of mine who's a massive Bill Evans fan, and he keeps going on about, you know, Scott LaFaro. Scott LaFaro is great, you know, but Paul Chambers was just unbelievable at the age of 20. So I mean, but I mean, Scott LaFaro is fantastic, and actually some of his my favourite playing is actually with Victor Feldman. You know, the arrival of Victor Feldman, it's a must-have. He plays great on that. But you know, those, especially the live ones when they play Milestones with Bill Evans, and he doesn't really play any walking lines. It's Paul Motion who's actually holding it together. I mean, they're all holding it together, but Scotty's got this sort of this thing, and I mean, he's just a brilliant player. It's interesting, you know. I think because he had a background as playing tenor saxophone, and so he comes at with a slightly different, but yeah, just a phenomenal player. And there's actually some great, I'm really into arranging, and I've got a really good Marty Paich album called The Broadway Bit, and it's got a young Scott LaFaro on that with Victor Feldman playing vibes, and Scotty sounds fantastic on it, so I'd say Scott LaFaro.
Wow, yeah, I mean there's those Village Vanguard albums, right?
With Bill Evans, yeah.
Yeah, with Waltz for Debbie and Sunday at the Village Vanguard, and some, wow. And well, again, the stuff he's hearing, you know, and some of the little counterpoint things or whatever he's doing with, if I'm using the right terms, with Bill. I mean, Bill Evans must have loved that, having that going on. And like you say, Paul Motion, sometimes stirring the soup with all that extraordinary stuff going on. Yeah, fantastic. Now, the last one on my list, again, this guy's got to be on here, is Jack Bruce with Cream, but also his solo stuff later and things with other people. I did my dissertation on, or whatever you call it, on Jack Bruce, and I transcribed the whole of the Disraeli Gears album, the second Cream album, and I had to do an arrangement for a concert. It must be about, it's nearly 20 years ago now, and it was Unchain My Heart, which I think Joe Cocker did, but before that, crikey, it'll come back to me now. Oh, Ray Charles did it, and then later on Joe Cocker, and it was like a rock version of Unchain My Heart. And you know, like you're doing a transcription, because it's the bass part, and hopefully you can hear it. I'm just writing out the bass. I'm just writing out, you know, variations and stuff on the bass. And although I don't think he hasn't played the song to my knowledge, I looked at the end and went, oh my gosh, looks like a Jack Bruce part. Completely subliminal. I hadn't realised I was doing that, because so much of it went in from just mountains of transcriptions that I did for, in about 1990, 1991. And I love his playing. And I guess, you know, Cream, influenced so much of what came later. So it's going to Jack Bruce is going to have to be number one, just because so much of it ended up in my playing, I suppose. You know, didn't sound like Jack Bruce, but what can you do? I certainly can't sing like him, I wish, or write songs like him.
One of the first bass riffs ever I learned, I was playing in a rock band, and it was it Sunshine of Your Love?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a blues scale, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's well, I still get asked for that now.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and again, it does get called occasionally. I've even had to sing it a couple of times, and it's unfortunate I don't have Jack Bruce's operatic chops, but somebody's got to sing, you know. Right, and I'll pass it over for last one.
Well, I mean, look, there's loads of people I missed out who are just fantastic, and really love Larry Grenadier. I love, there's so many great players. There's a young guy I really like, David Wong, who's a really good player now. I really love Peter Washington. You know, I mean, in many ways, I could easily do 5 players who are dead and 5 players who are alive still. You know, right. Peter Washington. There's that guy, I keep forgetting his name, plays guitar as well, but he plays with like Joe Farnsworth and Eric Alexander, I think he's moved out to St. Louis. I've forgotten his name, but he's a big influence. But anyway, I'm gonna just I think the guy I really love listening to and who I take down his stuff is Christian McBride. Just a phenomenal player, plays great bass guitar as well as double bass, and it's funny because things go in trends at the moment. I was playing with a young drummer the other day, and there's a thing saying, oh, you know, Chris McBride plays a little bit of a lower action. Yeah, but you know, you have to get around that. But the amount of music that's in Chris McBride's playing, I mean, I just hear great bounce to his playing. He really grooves. I think there's a lot of players who are now playing with lower actions than people did in the old days, because you've got an amp, you know, so you don't need to try to project so much. But I mean, it's a trade-off about where you put it. And but McBride is he's just phenomenal, and I like some things more than others. But you know, every time I see him live, I always learn something new, and he's so groovy. He plays all over the instrument, and he's just a phenomenal player.
Yeah. Yeah, you sent me some great Christian McBride stuff. Wow. And like you say, on the bass guitar, is that John Schofield with like in a park or something?
Yeah.
And I could sit there just listening to John Schofield's bends. I mean, forget everything else that's going on. It's, you know, listen to
that's
that.
with Antonio Sanchez, isn't it? And he's playing like this. McBride's playing like this Hofner bass.
Right.
It's like a smaller scale thing.
Well, he's certainly getting around it. That's for sure. Wow, blimey. So now then. We're bound to have missed loads of people out on bass guitar and double bass. Be delighted to see in the comments who your big bass influences were, or your favourites, or the people that you think are the best players and all that stuff. If you're interested in more content like this, please consider subscribing, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching.